Enve has today launched its first ever bike, the Custom Road. Available in either race or all-road geometries, with maximum tyre clearances altered to suit, each bike is bespoke made to each customer's fit using a modular tube-to-tube construction. Every bike is also given a custom paint job. Prices start at $7,000 for a frame set, rising to $12,500 for a Shimano Dura-Ace Di2 or SRAM Red eTap-equipped equipped build. Until now, Enve has solely focused on producing wheels, forks, tyres, finishing kit and a handful of other parts. Unlike most custom bike builders, this background puts Enve in a really unique position, offering, with the exception of the group set, a fully in-house build. This offers a level of integration that is pretty much unmatched in the custom carbon road bike market. Now, before we get stuck into the bikes, let's quickly go over why Enve has built a bike in the first place. Now, Enve actually has some previous experience building frames. In the past, it's partnered up with brands including Parley, Santa Cruz and independent fabrications to make some really interesting kind of one-off projects. The brand also supplies individual tubes and forks to custom frame builders and will continue to do so going forward. Following on from this experience, Enve says it's decided to pursue its own bike program following pretty much just customer demand. People wanted to see Enve making a road bike. They also say, from their point of view, it was also something they just wanted to make, and it feels like a natural progression from what is a pretty comprehensive suite of parts otherwise. The decision to pursue a road bike in particular is said to have come when the brand was testing its SES AR wheelset on the Carrefour de Labre, which is a very famous cobbled secteur that's used in the Paris-Roubaix. That particular wheelset is designed to optimise aerodynamic performance when using wider tyres, which can provide a smoother and faster ride overall on rougher surfaces. Enve points out that way back in 2016-2017, when that wheelset was tested, there were very few race bikes on the market that were designed to take anything wider than a 28mm tyre, hence the inspiration to design this bike. With that in mind, the Enve Custom Road is an all-round, slightly aero-optimised road bike that, in its two different configurations, are designed to work with tyres up to 28mm wide on the race version and 35mm wide on the all-road version. Now, going over the geometry of these bikes is a slightly complex task. As each bike is custom made to each customer's specifications, there may be significant changes in geometry between any two bikes. In summary though, the race geometry has a slightly shorter wheelbase overall and a slightly steeper head angle to give what Enve describes as classic crit-like handling. The all-road geometry is a slightly longer bike overall, with a slightly slacker head angle and a very slightly longer rake to maintain the same kind of trail figure you see between the two bikes. Establishing optimal fit is done via a consultation process, which first looks at a rider's previous and current bikes and goes over what they liked and didn't like about it. Enve will also look at special circumstances, so something like an injury, and try to accommodate that within the design of the bike. With that, the brand claims it will come to an optimal stack and reach arrangement for each rider, and from there they plug it into a kind of table of stock geometries and customize things as required from there. At that point, the bike is ready to be spec'd up, built, what have you. Now, the Custom Road has been wind tunnel tested, and it features all the usual tropes of a modern aero road bike. We've got flattened profiles on the down tube, you've got a really smooth transition between the fork and the head tube. It looks like an aero bike. Now, Enve doesn't actually supply any specific claims about the aero qualities of the bike, but I'm willing to forgive them a little bit in this circumstance. As each bike is custom made, giving an overall figure is going to be meaningless because it's going to change between each rider. Enve did, however, add a really interesting tidbit which is absolutely true. If aerodynamics are your #1 concern, given this is a fully custom bike, it will be possible to optimize your fit to be as aerodynamically efficient as possible without compromising on handling. Now, most riders should be able to get themselves into a long, low and narrow position, swapping stems, seat posts, bars on a stock bike. The problem comes where, say you want to run a particularly aggressive position, but that means you have to run, say, an excessively long stem, then the handling can be affected negatively. With this, you shouldn't run into any such problems. Of course, all of this comes at enormous expense, and the bike isn't cheap, and I am going to go over that at the very end of this video, but if you are absolutely uncompromising in your pursuit of all-out fastness and you simply cannot have a bike that anybody else has, then it could be for you. Each frame is constructed using a modular tube-to-tube construction, with everything made at Enve's headquarters in Ogden, Utah. It's important to clarify that the custom nature of this bike only relates to fit. You aren't able to go to Enve and say, "Hello, I'd like a very, very expensive gravel bike based on this one." It's only really going to affect, things that will affect your fit. So the length of tubes, maybe the angles, but really you're going to be more limited than your kind of typical custom builder experience. I do think this is a really interesting proposition though. There's plenty of truly amazing artisan builders out there making wonderful bikes out of steel, titanium, and in limited circumstances, carbon. Enve stands apart with its full suite of components to back up this bike. Enve rightfully points out that there is a point of diminishing returns when it comes to weight. For an unpainted 56cm frame, Enve claims that you're looking at a weight of around 850 grams for the frame. That's pretty damn light, but really, aero optimization, longevity, and a kind of good ride quality are clearly what Enve is pursuing here. In addition to the frame, Enve has also developed the SES AR integrated cockpit. Enve has also worked with Chris King to create the Aeroset. Like nearly all fully integrated road bikes, the custom road routes its hoses and cables down either side of the steerer tube, with little gaps at the top of the headset allowing those to pass through the top bearing of the headset. The bike is also built around an integrated seat mast. For those of you that don't know, that basically does away with the seat post in the bike and extending the seat tube all the way up where a seat post would normally sit. This is then topped with Enve's seat mast topper, which has been available to custom builders for some years now. My eyebrows were raised to a truly heady height when I first saw the seat mast on this bike, but on reflection, given it is a custom bike, I'm a little bit willing to forgive Enve here, because if you're spending this kind of money, you're going through this whole process, you probably know what you want. In any case, the seat mast topper gives 35mm vertical adjustment, which even if you're making a fairly drastic change between pedal systems or saddles, should be enough to accommodate your needs. Now, this is the genuine highlight for me of this bike. Both the race and the all-road version of the bike feature Mudguard mounts. Mudguard mounts, I love Mudguards. Shockingly few carbon road bikes, let alone high-end race bikes like this, come with Mudguard mounts. I see no reason for them not to. They do not detract from the performance or looks of a bike when integrated in the neat way that Enve has. It simply makes the bike more versatile overall and makes it far more pleasant to ride in the winter months. I would simply rather have the option to run proper full cover mudguards than not. Nobody is crying out for a bike which can do less. Thumbs up to Enve here, and they get a million kisses from me. Now, of course, this is a custom bike. To go alongside a custom bike, you need custom paint. I'm not going to go through each of the individual options, but basically you have a choice of 38 different colours for the stock builds and then various other fancy ones which you can up-spec depending on just how deep those pockets of yours are. If you haven't spent enough money already, you can even buy a pair of matching bottle cages at $400 each. Incidentally, speccing your bike up, including paint visualization, is done through an online app which is quite similar to something like Orbea's Myo program or Trek's Project One program. Now, as I've mentioned, these bikes aren't cheap. $7,000 for a frame set is pretty expensive, and you can go all the way up to $12,500 for the very most expensive Dura-Ace build. There are also a couple of middle of the range, which is perhaps being generous, options which are based around the foundation wheel set. These come with an Ultegra or SRAM Force AXS group set and will set you back $9,500. There's no international pricing for this, but you can do a conversion for your local area. Now, shooting from the other side of my bedroom because the sun invaded my last shot, I'm joined remotely by good friend and colleague Matthew Loveridge. Matthew, how are you today?
I'm very excited to talk about a new road bike.
What do you think, actually, just to kick things off, what do you think of the Enve Custom Road, perhaps the least creatively named bike we've talked about in a while?
Yeah, the name was maybe a little bit of a letdown. I think first impressions are it looks great. It's really interesting seeing such a kind of integrated bike come from a manufacturer that's not done a full bike before. And having that complete system, I think, is really cool, really interesting. And, you know, it looks quite good as well. And at the end of the day, when you're spending this much money on a bike, I think that's quite important.
Yeah, I think you're making an emotional decision if you're spending $12,500 on any bike, regardless of whether it's custom or not. But, you know, I think part of the fun and the experience of having that bike is speccing the whole thing up. So yeah, it's not rational, but it looks very cool.
How do you feel about the whole seat mast thing? Because I don't love seat masts, if I'm honest, but I can see why they would have done it.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. Like, I don't think they're a great solution for everyone, particularly because they're so limiting in terms of fit. And also, like, let's say you're buying something like a top-end giant TCR, maybe in a couple of years down the line, you want to sell it. Well, if you've cut the seat mast, you're going to have to find someone who has the same inseam length as you, which really complicates things. I think on this kind of case, it is a custom bike. You're going through this really in-depth fit process, and how many people are likely to sell it down the line, it's probably less than normal. And also, because it is so custom, I'm willing to kind of forgive it, but it looks good as well. Now, value is definitely not the word I would use, but if you were to measure the comparative value of these two bikes, I'd argue you are actually getting more with the Enve. Now, 12.5 grand doesn't equate to value, but what do you reckon? Am I on the right track or talking nonsense?
I think that's a really fair point. I mean, once you get up into this realm, value is almost irrelevant, and it starts to be very much, on the one hand, about like, am I getting the most up-to-date, cutting-edge, interesting technology? And on the other, like, how does it make me feel? But I guess given the choice between something off the peg like that Tarmac or the Athos or any of the other kind of halo bikes which come in a fixed spec, and something that is genuinely tailored to your needs, the Enve makes a pretty compelling case. I guess maybe they just appeal to different people, I don't know, because I sort of feel like if you're a really serious racer with some coin to drop on a bike, you just go out and you buy the Tarmac because it's the race bike. Whereas I feel like this is going to be like a dream bike, the Enve, for a lot of people. Custom carbon, it's been around for years, but there really isn't that much choice in that world. Whereas the world of custom, we're very used to custom steel, custom titanium, but this gives you like something which combines some of the features of those bikes like the Tarmac and the Athos and any number of others, but then it's also custom. That is quite good.
Yeah, the actual manufacturing of it's really interesting because most custom carbon road bikes, now there's exceptions out there, but they tend to use a really traditional tube-to-tube construction with either molded or even like cast alloy lugs, and that's how you get your degree of customization, whereas this does look more, I know it is tube-to-tube at the same time, but it does look more like a normal monocoque frame. I'd be really keen to know exactly how it's made.
I guess if there's a downside to that, because it is such a clean construction that looks like It almost makes it look more mass production, because a lot of custom bikes, they really shout about how custom they are. So you get like ornate lugs or something on metal bikes, or various little custom tweaks that really show off the construction. But Enve's construction is so slick for this bike that actually, if you don't know what you're looking at, you might very well assume that it is an off-the-peg frame.
Of course, you do have the option though with this bike to spec fully custom paint. Now, they're not alone in that. You do have someone like Trek's Project One or Baez Mayo and various others. If you really want to stand out from the crowd, Matthew, what colour would you paint your bike?
I think you do yourself a disservice if you don't go quite leery with a bike like this. So I'm thinking, like bright yellow option, or so there's a nice green in there, and I feel like there are not enough green bikes in the world. I think there's also some kind of fadey options, which is obviously very on trend at the moment. Whether or not that will be cool in 5 years' time, don't know, don't care, because I'm rich, I'm buying a $12,500 bike. But yeah, you really have to go all out, because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, if you got this bike and you painted it brown or something, nah, it's not going to last the test of time. I just wanted to finish on one final thing. I think, I don't want to make any assumptions about you, Matthew, but knowing you as I do, I think you're probably more of an all-road man than a race man, and I put myself in the same camp. And that kind of 35mm tyre clearance is very tasty to me. I think that's kind of just exactly as much as you'd want on a kind of road bike that you can tickle off-road. Do you have any further thoughts on that? I know it's something you've been talking about a lot.
I'd certainly, if I were buying one of these, huge if, but I would certainly go for the kind of all-roady option. I'm a huge fan of that kind of gravel adjacent thing. It's my favourite expression, trying to make it a thing. Because
Matthew made this phrase up, by the way. He's very proud of it, and he keeps using it all the time.
All the time, yeah. It's definitely going to be a thing, because gravel's a huge spectrum of types of riding, but I love it when I'm riding a road bike. But I know that I can go and ride, a bit fire road or something. I'm not talking about pretending it's a mountain bike, because it's not. It's a road bike, and it's still going to be a pure fast thing on tarmac. But having the option, slightly fatter tyres, running the tubeless, yeah, I'd definitely be leaning that way though, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Enve, if you want to send Matthew or I one of those bikes, please do, and we'll put it through its paces, and we might give it back. Thank you very much, Matthew. That was a pleasure, and enjoy the rest of your day. So there you have it, the Enve Custom Road, a truly lovely and truly expensive bike, which is intriguing, and I'm certainly going to be watching quite closely. I wonder whether this will be Enve's only bike. I'm doubtful. I fully expect that they're going to kind of expand into other areas that we don't know anything. But yeah, a really cool bike, and one I hope I get to ride. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you do have any questions about the bike, feedback, I don't know, you just want to say something nice about Dunkel, leave your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you again soon.